So in today's video, we're talking about Elgato's 4KX, which promises high-end 4K capture features with plug-and-play simplicity, but if you're a Mac user, it's not that simple. So I wanted a workflow improvement, and instead it's going back to the store. So right off the bat, I want to explain that I do reviews on the channel often for products that I am sent by brands. And I tell you about that when it happens. In this case, I purchased this one with my own money, and I'm gonna get into the reason why. But first, let's start with what Elgato advertises for the 4KX, because on paper, this capture card looks close to perfect if you're a serious creator. So Elgato targets the 4KX at gamers, streamers, content creators who need simple, powerful capture. Headline specs are up to 10 gigabits per second via USB, full 4K capture at 60 frames a second, 10-bit HDR support in a plug and play external design. So if you work in video, especially if you care about professional post workflows, those features are essential. My goal was to get clean 4K 10-bit HDR straight into an SSD, feeding it right through my Mac OS setup. I didn't want to have to do a bunch of hacky stuff, and as a Mac user, I really didn't want to have to break out my Thunderbolt enclosure. And that's what Elgato leads with in their website and their packaging. But as you'll see, my actual experience on Mac OS doesn't really match their pitch. So I came in with high expectations. I read the spec sheet, but the specs only matter if the real world results are there. So if you've been eyeing something like this for your setup and you are a Mac user, pay close attention. Real quick, I want to jump in and let you know that this video is sponsored by me. Now, unless I say otherwise, every video on this channel is backed by my photography business. YouTube revenue is nice, but it doesn't really help keep the lights on. I am a working professional photographer. It's how I make a living. I specialize in portraits, family sessions, and photo and video work for small businesses. Now, if you're in Las Vegas, LA, Riverside, Orange County, or San Diego, and you need professional content that actually makes you look good, I am available. You'll find info and links down in the description. So let's get into the nitty-gritty of USB connections and bandwidth issues. So here's where my challenges start. The USB connection isn't as plug and play as Elgato claims when you're on a Mac. So when I first plugged the 4KX into my Mac, the connection failed to achieve the advertised 10 gigabit per second USB bandwidth. In fact, on the box, it claims that it is USB 3.2 Gen 2 compatible, and I have to this day not been able to get anything better than 3.1. Now that is using the USB cable that they put in the box, as well as USB 3.2 certified cables, Thunderbolt 3 and Thunderbolt 4 cables, all attached to a Thunderbolt 4 port. No matter what cable I used or port I used, I was not able to get full connectivity out of the box. Every single time it registered at 5 gigabits per second, which isn't even 3.1 speeds. And what I was able to determine is that there is a feature in their software that allows you to unlock the 10 gigabit per second option. Because at some point in the update cycle of macOS, the 10 gigabit connection was dropped down to 5 gigabit. And in order to turn 10 gigabit back on, and there's a warning box that pops up when you do this, you effectively have to relegate yourself to never using an older version of macOS. But even then, that button doesn't exist unless you're holding down the option key inside their software that you have to install. So that doesn't sound like plug and play. Now, once you turn on this switch, it does register as a 10 gigabit connection, but it's still USB 3.1, not 3.2 Gen 2. And this isn't just a minor issue. If you are expecting to be able to shoot in 4K 60, you need that bandwidth. But we'll talk more about bandwidth in just a second. Really quick, I've got something special for those of you who are supporting the channel. Starting May 31st, I've got 2 brand new packs available exclusively for my YouTube members. I'm not selling these anywhere. You'll get access to my Springtone Lightroom preset pack. This is designed for clean, natural portraits and family sessions. I've been using it all season, as well as my Cinelabs pack, which is a curated LUT pack with 5 cinematic looks crafted specifically for video. If you're already a member, it'll be waiting for you on the 31st, and if not, you can join right here and get access when they drop. So does the actual video quality match the 4KX's promise? Not really. So the most critical specification for me was the ability to capture at 10-bit. Now, my workflow utilizes Canon cameras. I shoot on the R6 Mark II and the R5, which is actually up here. Now, both of those cameras are capable of various specs and codecs coming out of their HDMI ports. Specifically, they are capable of exporting 4K video in 10-bit. And the reason why that matters is that each pixel in 10-bit can translate 1024 bits of information versus 8-bit, which is only 256. 256 bits of color gives you 16 million colors. 1024 gives you a billion. And the difference between 16 million and a billion is a lot. And that actually does translate when you start working with your footage. First of all, you see a lot more banding in gradients like the sky, or if you've got colorful backgrounds. When you go from a color like this to a color like that, the difference in those colors is made up by other colors. And the more colors you have, the smoother that transition is. In 10-bit, it can be smooth and clean, and in 8-bit, it can be blocky and have banding. The other reason is that when you ingest that footage into your editor, you can actually manipulate that footage quite a bit more. There's a lot more data to work with, and your post-editing workflow or color grading has headroom. You have just a lot more flexibility with the footage that you've captured. But unfortunately on macOS, that option just doesn't exist. The highest quality that I was able to get was standard dynamic range, 4K in 8-bit. That's 422 SDR. The advertised 10-bit HDR is just not available no matter what settings I used. That's at 24, 30, and 60 frames per second. But on the subject of frame rates, while testing the Elgato 4KX, I tested in both 24p, 30p, and 60p. And traditionally, these videos that I film are filmed in 24p or 23.98, depending on the camera that I'm shooting on. And when I had my camera in that mode, things looked jittery and unnatural. And before you come at me in the comments, yes, I know about the 180-degree rule. My shutter speed was accurate. And I do know that 24p is a little more stuttery than 30 or 60. Now, bumping up to 30 and 60 definitely improved the overall look, but I don't shoot in 30 or 60. My workflow isn't designed for 30 or 60, and I just wasn't able to find a workaround. Now, unlike the color issue, I don't know if the frame rate issue was related to the driver. I confirmed using terminal commands that it was receiving 24 frames per second, as well as 30, and I was able to achieve 60 frames per second and confirm that by inspecting the stream coming in from the USB port. And while I had seen folks online talk about the issues with the 10 gigabit per second connection, honestly, I figured at 4K 24 in 10-bit, I wouldn't run into any limitations. But it's not just about hardware and specs. Elgato's software support on the Mac is lacking. The Elgato 4K capture utility, a core part of the experience on Windows, is either missing or deeply limited in macOS. So while there is a utility called 4K capture utility, it's actually called capture device utility on the Mac, and it lacks many of the features that you see on the Windows variant. Specifically, there's no way to access fully featured diagnostics or any sort of settings adjustments. You can't verify signal status, and you can't diagnose whether or not you're capturing the correct resolution, bit rate, frame rate. You're left poking around with terminal commands. So if you've used the capture utility from Elgato on the Windows side of things, just know on the Mac side of things, it feels kind of unfinished, and they've actually said publicly that they have no intention of updating that software. Really, it's for two things. One, updating the firmware, which I did, and didn't see any of these problems go away. And number two is turning on that 10 gigabit mode while holding down the option key. So if you're looking for reliable, verifiable captures, not having transparent feedback is a problem. So missing or incomplete software is not just an annoyance, it has you guessing whether or not you're getting what you paid for. So I bought the 4KX for a very specific reason. I needed a reliable 4K 10-bit HDR capture that would plug straight into my Mac to give me editing workflow solutions for both standard def and high def video. And while I do traditionally export in an 8-bit standard definition quality video, but starting in 10-bit in either Rec 2020 or Canon Cinema Gamut in Rec 709 gives you a much larger breadth of capability when it comes to color grading and adjusting your footage. And what I got was 8-bit. standard dynamic range with headaches around frame rates and connection issues. That's not just far from ideal, it's far from what's on the box. So the gap between expectation and reality is why I'm going to be heading back with my receipt to get a refund. I actually talked to their team directly when I was at NAB and explained what my intentions were, which was to record directly to an external SSD attached to my Mac in 4K 10-bit 422. And while I will give them credit, the only folks at NAB that were able to give me any sort of information about that type of connection were the folks at the Blackmagic booth. What they told me was actually incorrect. And at the Elgato booth, they really couldn't tell me much at all. They didn't really understand what I was asking for, or why, or how. But here's the bottom line. This device is not for Mac users. You just don't get what's on the box. If you need more than 8-bit standard definition video, then this is definitely not the product for you. But unfortunately, the other options that are available are 3 to 5 times the cost. Now, I want to be 100% clear. I am not necessarily blaming Elgato for the connection issues. As I understand, that was a result of framework changes with macOS's updates. And I'm not really blaming them for the lack of HDR. That's a codec issue, and really it lands very squarely in the Apple camp. So I want to break into this review video with a quick story. While my wife and I were in the hospital welcoming our baby girl, my personal Facebook and Instagram accounts were hacked and permanently shut down. My professional Instagram, which I built over years, was completely gone. And as a photographer, having a visible presence is important. So I'm rebuilding, and I really could use your help. But I want to make it worthwhile, so I'm running a giveaway. Now, I get gear from brands all the time, and once I'm done doing my reviews, I don't always keep that gear. Instead, I want to give it to you. So here's how to enter. It's simple. Follow me on Instagram, subscribe to this channel, comment on this video that you followed me on Instagram. And once I hit 1,000 followers, I'm going to start sending out free gear. And if you really want to help, you can like and share my content on Instagram while you're there. It makes a big difference. But the reason that I'm not going to blame Apple for this situation is twofold. Number one, I've got a box here that says HDR10 capture that also says that it supports the Mac. There's no asterisks here, there's no nothing. And if you dig deep on their website, you actually can find towards the very bottom where it says that it supports 4K up to 144 hertz, up to 144 frames per second in HDR10, there's a little asterisk next to that. And if you follow that down to the bottom, where it says that 4K HDR cannot be recorded in all frame rate and resolution combinations, that then links to a support page. If you click on that link and go to the support page, where they have an entire grid displaying each potential resolution and the potential pass-through signal for that resolution, where 4K 30 is listed as being able to record in both SDR and HDR. If you keep scrolling down that page, past the codec list where it talks about all the different codecs and what they'll record in, where it lists 10-bit video, albeit in 420 chroma subsample, as being totally possible in 4K 30 as well as 1440p. In fact, at 1440, it'll support 60 frames per second in HDR 10-bit and even 30 frames per second HDR 10-bit at 1440p using a 5 gigabit connection. There are no asterisks on this page. As you continue scrolling and you get to the very bottom of that page where it says HDR, high dynamic range, it says the 4KX supports pass-through of HDR10 and capture of 10-bit HDR video. And under that, it says Windows. You need an NVIDIA 10 series or later card. And that's on the box. NVIDIA GeForce GTX 10XX or better. It also says USB 3.2 Type-C Gen 2 port, and that Gen 1 works with lower resolution signals. It calls out a 6th generation Intel Core i5, as well as Windows 10, Mac OS 13, or iPad OS 17, recording and pass-through up to 4K 144 and HDR10 support. It's all here. And at the very bottom of that page where it says Mac OS, HDR capture is not available for macOS as macOS does not support the required video codec. HDR pass-through via HDMI is available. HDR video will be converted to SDR by 4KX before going to your Mac. So if you're on Windows, you'll likely get the full experience. But for Mac users, you're going to get 8-bit SDR video. For my workflow and for anyone whose standards are similar, it's a no-go. So I'm going to be returning the 4KX, and I cannot recommend it for Mac-based creators unless your needs are limited to 8-bit. But to be honest, there are some other devices out there that cost less, especially if your primary use case is going to be streaming. So that's it for my review of the Elgato 4KX. If you want to support the channel and what I'm doing here, consider becoming a channel member. You'll get access to exclusive resources like LUTs and presets, highlighted comments, members only live videos, and early access to my new uploads. If you're looking to book a photo or video session, all the details are down in the description. I'm in LA, Las Vegas, Riverside, Orange County, and San Diego. Down there, you'll also find all of my gear links, including my 2025 Content Creator Essentials list for anyone who's looking to get started. Those are affiliate links, so picking something up does help the channel. Don't forget, I am rebuilding my Instagram after losing my account, and I've got a giveaway going on. Just follow me over on Instagram, subscribe here, drop a comment saying that you followed me on Instagram to enter. But as always, the easiest way to support the channel is just to hit like, hit subscribe. That stuff's free and it really helps. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.